Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so your friends see it. Thank you.
Trump U.S. working very quickly on deal to exempt Australia from tariffs. President Donald Trump said on Friday that he and Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull of Australia were working to quickly strike a deal to exempt the country from U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. The president tweeted that he had spoken to Turnbull, who Trump said was committed to having a very fair and reciprocal military and trade relationship. Working very quickly on a security agreement so we don't have to impose steel or aluminum tariffs on our ally, the great nation of Australia, Trump wrote. Trump initially floated the idea of exempting the U.S. ally at a cabinet meeting on Thursday while discussing his proposal to impose a 25% tariff on steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum, a plan he signed later that day. The president said he planned to be very flexible in trade negotiations, reserving the right to extend or remove tariff exemptions and lower or raise the percentage of the duty imposed. Determinations on whether to lift tariffs for certain nations, Trump said, would be based on national security interests. We'll be making a decision as to who they are, the president said. We have a very close relationship with Australia. We have a trade surplus with Australia. Great country, long-term partner. We'll be doing something with them. We'll be doing something with some other countries. Mexico and Canada, two fellow members of the North American Free Trade Agreement, are initially exempt from Trump's tariffs, with the president saying their status going forward will depend on their ability to renegotiate the trade pact. If we reach a deal, it's most likely we won't be charging those two countries the tariffs, he said. Negotiators for the U.S., Mexico and Canada have tentatively set March 31st as a deadline for reworking the trade deal. The steel and aluminum tariffs have ignited worries about a border trade war, with some countries pledging to retaliate by taxing U.S. products. Former Trump advisor Sam Nunberg testifies before Mueller grand jury. Sam Nunberg, the conservative activist and former political advisor to Donald Trump, spent more than 6 hours on Friday answering questions before a grand jury investigating allegations of collusion between the 2016 Trump campaign and Russia. Nunberg, who threatened earlier this week to defy a subpoena from special counsel Robert Mueller, ignored a throng of reporters and did not comment as he left the federal courthouse building in Washington. His attorney, Patrick Brackley, also did not comment. Nunberg offered the Mueller grand jury a window into multiple areas of Trump's political career. He worked for Trump starting in 2014 when he was still mulling a New York gubernatorial bid and then into the earliest days of his presidential campaign. He was fired once and then, after being rehired, was fired again in August 2015 over racially insensitive Facebook posts. Despite being on the outs with Trump, Nunberg has nonetheless remained in close contact with staffers who have also circulated inside the president's orbit, including Roger Stone and Steve Bannon. Nunberg's grand jury appearance capped a whirlwind week that started with his anonymous leaking to the media of a Mueller subpoena for his communications with Trump and other members of the president's inner circle. He embarked on a series of erratic, manic interviews, many on live television, in which he vowed to defy the subpoena, speculated that prosecutors had something on Trump, made disparaging remarks about several Trump aides, and suggested that prosecutors were seeking to indict Roger Stone, a prominent Trump advisor. Despite his initial comments about ignoring the subpoena and potentially risking arrest for contempt of court, Nunberg quickly backed down and agreed to comply. By midweek, he told reporters he was turning over materials Mueller had requested, including emails with Stone and former Trump aides Steve Bannon, Paul Manafort, Rick Gates, Keith Schiller, Corey Lewandowski, and Carter Page. Nunberg's participation had another twist. Fox Business Network reporter Charles Gasparino said Tuesday that he'd spoken with Nunberg, who reportedly said he was planning to enter substance abuse treatment after his grand jury testimony. "There's something, and drinking I believe is a big part of it, and that's what happened yesterday," Gasparino said. "That's where the story actually goes from here." Nunberg's initial defiance prompted all manner of analysis over whether the Mueller grand jury should even be talking with a witness who was headed in for mental health or substance abuse treatment. "The team may be debating that very question as we speak," Melinda Hogg, a former federal prosecutor who worked with Mueller when he was a U.S. attorney in San Francisco in the late 1990s, said in an interview on Wednesday. But a defense attorney working with another senior Trump aide predicted that Mueller's team would bring Nunberg in for the grand jury appearance and begin by peppering him with questions to determine his sobriety, credibility and fitness to answer questions. The former Trump aide's public suggestions about skipping the grand jury appearance, the lawyer added, may have been a strong indication to Mueller that he was still worth talking to. "Honestly, if I'm Mueller, one of the things I'm thinking is, this guy probably does have something to say and he's making a big stink to spook me into withdrawing the subpoena so there's no sideshow at the grand jury on Friday," the lawyer said, adding that Mueller may decide, "I'm going to call the guy's bluff." Nunberg earlier this week said he was hardly a fan of Trump, who had sued his former staffer at one point for $10 million for breaching a confidentiality agreement. They settled the case a month later. In a January interview, Nunberg said he didn't expect to be contacted by Mueller. But that may have changed with the mid-January publication of Michael Wolff's tell-all book, Fire and Fury. The book quotes Nunberg describing everything from his allegiance with Bannon to Trump's decision to run for president and attempts to explain the Constitution to the rookie political candidate. Trump's bold stroke on North Korea dissolves into confusion. The White House on Friday appeared to set tougher conditions for a meeting between President Donald Trump and the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, saying that the North must take concrete steps toward denuclearizing. The White House also seemed to back away from the two-month timeframe laid out by South Korean officials on Thursday evening during a highly unusual press announcement in the White House driveway. "Look, they've got to follow through on the promises they made," Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said during a briefing Friday, raising the possibility that a meeting may never happen, even though the White House had touted it as a major achievement less than 24 hours earlier. On Saturday afternoon, Trump tweeted, "In the first hours after hearing that North Korea's leader wanted to meet with me to talk denuclearization and that missile launches will end, the press was startled and amazed. They couldn't believe it. But by the following morning the news became fake. They said, so what, who cares?" The comments underscored the complexity of staging a dramatic meeting between Trump and the North Korean dictator, and raised doubts about whether it may be possible to arrange such a summit at all. The North Korea announcement's sudden rollout, followed by confusion and then tons of caveats, also followed a pattern of policymaking in the Trump White House, in which pronouncements often come before detailed plans are concrete. At issue Friday was the nature of what the North Koreans had promised. Sanders called denuclearization a precondition for any direct meeting between Trump and Kim. But experts called the prospect of North Korea dismantling its nuclear program before the start of talks totally unimaginable. Trump flagged the news of the North Korea meeting to reporters himself, poking his head into the White House press room around 5 p.m. on Thursday to say an announcement would be coming. A senior administration official said Trump made the decision on the offer during his meeting with the South Korean National Security Advisor Chung Eui-yong, who arrived in Washington after visiting Pyongyang earlier this week. "The president just wanted to see them earlier and said, just have them come in right now, today," said the senior administration official. "I don't think anybody expected the president to say right now on the spot that he would take the meeting, but he did." But the announcement that Trump would meet directly with the North Korean dictator, which the White House framed as another instance of Trump's iconoclastic approach to diplomacy, drew immediate skepticism from senior Republican lawmakers, diplomats, and national security experts. The thing that's striking here is that there is no letter from Kim. This was an oral message conveyed by North Koreans to the South Koreans, said Eric Edelman, who served as Undersecretary of Defense for Policy in the George W. Bush administration. What they actually said, what they heard him say, and then what they transmitted to Trump could be two or three different things, and it's not like we haven't had that in the past, Edelman added. There can be elements of wishful thinking here, and so I think people really need to be approaching this with a great deal of caution. Outstanding questions about any potential encounter included the preconditions for the meeting and how the U.S. would verify that North Korea had halted its nuclear weapons program before the two heads of state met. There was also the question of which top U.S. officials or diplomats would help the U.S. prepare for the session, since Trump has not yet nominated an ambassador to South Korea and the State Department's top experts on South and North Korea recently resigned. The president has an incredible team, Sanders said, when asked which officials would accompany Trump. But at the end of the day, the ultimate person to lead that negotiation and conversation will be the president. Steve Goldstein, Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs at the State Department, said the department is perfectly capable of handling this new diplomatic development, even though it currently has no ambassador in South Korea and no special envoy for North Korean issues. The Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan sat in on Thursday's meeting with South Korean officials, where they presented North Korea's message and offer. There are many career staffers who deal with North Korea on a regular basis, Goldstein argued, including Susan Thornton, a career Foreign Service officer who's been nominated to lead the East Asia Bureau at State, who is close to be confirmed for the role and has a wealth of experience. This is what we do for a living, Goldstein said. Yet Trump has been known to interface with world leaders solo, much to the chagrin of national security experts. At the Group of 20 summit in last July, Trump had a side conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin without a U.S. interpreter. The only other participant was a Kremlin-provided interpreter. Sanders disputed the assertion that a summit between Kim and Trump would take place without major concessions from North Korea on its weapons program. I wish we could give Trump a card to take with him for the meeting that would say, remember that the person across the table murdered to warm beer. This is a killer, said one George W. Bush administration official. But, I mean, Trump does not have bad meetings. He's had a bad phone calls, but he doesn't have bad meetings. So this is going to be a huge victory for Kim. Trump on Thursday hailed the latest developments between the two estranged nations as great progress, while adding that the U.S. would not ease sanctions on North Korea until it tempered its nuclear ambitions. Sanders reiterated on Friday that the U.S. would not let up in its campaign to apply pressure to the country, despite the seeming thaw in diplomatic relations. Chung Eui-yong, the South Korean National Security Advisor, said in his remarks on Thursday evening outside the White House that Kim had extended an olive branch of sorts to the U.S. leader, adding that President Trump appreciated the greeting and said he would meet Kim Jong-un by May to achieve permanent denuclearization. Nahal Tusi contributed reporting.